Possibly. Me. Yep. Shows we're live. Guys, it is showing we are live. Okay, folks, if you're watching this, just bear with me for a second. Just need to get some sharing out of the way. Yep, just bear with me 1 second, folks. Be ready to roll. As soon as I get all this stuff. This is probably why I need an assistant. I need an assistant to start sharing this stuff for me. Okay, we are getting there. And just one more area I just have to hit. That didn't sound right. Alright, cool. I think we've gotten all the areas we need to get to. So let's get right on to this. So today's date, July 18th, 2020, and this is how the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, most Will Buchanan, on how the Frack We Got Here. We do take the events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. So before I do get started, I do have to say that sometimes we are going to show some things of a graphic nature, so viewer discretion is definitely advised. That being said, welcome. So guys, I initially started out with what I was going to talk about as far as things that happened this week, but we have to do our due diligence and actually respect the fact that we just got some news overnight that I think is particularly sad and needs to be respected. So we're just going to go into the video.
Throughout his life, John Lewis stood for people's rights. Born on an Alabama cotton farm into a segregated America, he'd not only lived to see an African-American elected president, he would be a major part of making it happen.
Tonight we gather here in this magnificent stadium in Denver because we still have a dream. We still have a dream.
Lewis, growing up, was angered by the unfairness of the Jim Crow South. He credited Martin Luther King Jr. for inspiring him to join the civil rights movement. And eventually, Lewis would become one of its most prominent leaders. As a student, he organized sit-ins at lunch counters. In the early 60s, he was a freedom rider, challenging segregation at interstate bus terminals across the South. The embodiment of nonviolence, he frequently suffered beatings by angry mobs. Lewis, 23 years old at the time, was the youngest speaker at the 1963 March on Washington.
We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now.
Then, 2 years later, led a march for voting rights in Selma. On the Edmund Pettus Bridge, he and the other marchers were met by heavily armed state and local police. They were set upon and beaten. Lewis suffering a fractured skull. It would be forever remembered as Bloody Sunday. The images of brutality shocked the nation, galvanizing support for the Voting Rights Act signed into law by President Lyndon Johnson. Lewis never lost his young activist spirit, taking it from protest to politics. Standing up for what he believed was right, Lewis was arrested more than 40 times by police, according to his congressional office.
I'm on my way, and we're going to win this race.
He was elected to city council in Atlanta, then to Congress in Washington, representing Georgia's 5th District, fighting against poverty and for health care while working to help younger generations by improving education. He reached out to young people in other ways, co-writing a series of graphic novels about the civil rights movement, winning him a National Book Award. In a life of so many moments and great achievements, it was the achievement of another in 2008 that perhaps meant the most: the election of President Barack Obama.
We have never been just a collection of individuals or a collection of red states and blue states. We are and always will be the United States of America.
A dream Lewis admits was too impossible to consider decades before, even as he fought to forge its foundation.
This is an unbelievable period in our history Martin Luther King Jr. will be very pleased to see what is happening in America. This is a long way from the March on Washington. It's a great distance from marching across that bridge in Selma in 1965 for the right to vote.
In 2011, after more than 50 years on the front lines of civil rights, Lewis received the nation's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, placed around his neck by America's first black president. Lewis wasn't content to just making history. He was also dedicated to preserving it. Consider the impetus of the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture. And he never stopped stirring up good trouble, as he liked to call it, boycotting the inaugurations of George W. Bush after the contested 2000 election, and vocally opposing Donald Trump in 2017, citing suspicions of Russian election meddling. At a protest against President Trump's immigration policy, the congressman, by then an elder statesman of the Democratic Party, riled up the crowd with words he had lived by as an activist, as a lawmaker, as a leader.
We must never, ever give up. We must be brave, bold, and courageous.
Rest well, sir. Rest well. If anybody didn't know, that is basically John Lewis, Representative John Lewis, did pass away overnight after a 6-month bout with cancer. And like I said, as the video showed, that man did have a great impact on the civil rights movement in his own right. So definitely peace and condolences out to his family. And trust me, that's part of our history that we definitely need to remember. That being said, guys, like I said, definitely want to go ahead and give that man his rose and his dues as well. So, going right along, guys, it has been a crazy week this far as the rise of coronavirus cases. Even more so that, aside from the other subject we're going to go into, you got a Georgia governor and a Georgia mayor beefing.
Coronavirus, the deadliest day yet in both Florida and Texas. Cases rising in 40 states tonight, and by the end of the day today, July, will already have more reported cases of the virus of any month since this pandemic began. And just as we were coming on tonight, the COVID tracking project now reporting a record number of cases from the states today, 71,000 cases in 24 hours alone. And tonight, as we always do here, the numbers, the lives lost, more than 138,000 Americans lost to this virus. In Florida tonight, that record daily toll, 156 deaths in 24 hours. Texas, that record high death toll as well, 129 lives lost. Army medical specialists have arrived in Houston to help the city's overtaxed hospitals there. And in San Antonio tonight, hospitals and morgues are running out of space. Refrigerated trucks have now been brought in. Arizona's hospitals are facing staffing shortages there, and 1 out of every 4 people tested in Arizona now are positive. And amid all of this, there is a raging debate over masks in this country. In Georgia, with cases and deaths rising, the governor there has now banned all local governments from requiring people to wear masks. We all know it's easy to get lost in all of these numbers night to night, but we do want to stay on the stories of the families affected in this country, the doctors and nurses affected.
Okay, so that video didn't show exactly what I wanted to show. But it did kind of go over what I wanted to talk about, kind of didn't. So, of course, Brian Kemp, Georgia's governor, as you heard, has decided that he wants to go ahead and ban the required face mask that most states have adopted by now. He wants to ban the use of face masking while out and about. Atlanta's mayor, who actually now has COVID-19, has came out and said that no, face masking is required in Atlanta and is enforcing that fact. Brian Kemp is actually suing the mayor for doing the right thing. Because, I'm sorry guys, we could go back and forth on this, and I know plenty of people out there. Look, and I have to keep stressing this the same way I stress voting. A mask works. Again, a mask is not going to prevent the spread of COVID-19. I cannot keep saying that enough. A mask doesn't prevent the spread of COVID-19, it limits your exposure. That's the whole point of wearing a mask. And I've seen people go, well, a mask isn't going to do anything. Yes, it does. It actually has proven, there are actually many studies out there. The CDC has said it. The Mayo Clinic has said it, and the International Council of Doctors has also said it. Wearing a mask reduces exposure. And of course, I keep saying this. We tried it the other way. You know, where you didn't wear a mask, where we tried to do social distancing, except on the 4th of July. Trust me, those numbers are coming in. Um, you try to do all these things, and COVID 19 cases increased. This is why I'm simply saying the only way something is going to change is that we need to start actually following rules and regulations. Wearing a mask will not harm you. And there's so and there and the mask business has exploded. I hate to break it to you guys, it's exploded. So you don't have to usually get the over the you don't have to get the the standard operational mask or the basic plastic mask. Those are fine. You can get the ones where I have one where it's a Captain America neck gaither, which is kind of a long scarf, but I can pull it right over my face and still works. There's no excuse at this point. So I don't feel bad, like I said before, like in my home state of Tennessee, it's a requirement now. It should have been a requirement. It should have been a requirement back in March. But hey, better late than never. But again, it doesn't hurt to wear a mask. It just doesn't. You can sit there and say, I'll be honest with you. If some of y'all like being choked, then some of y'all can't be complaining about wearing a mask. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Take it how you will. But speaking of things that are just crazy, the next video I'm going to show, I'm just going to be honest. If this is not a sign that this man does not need to be in office, nothing is.
With coronavirus cases soaring across the U.S. and parents becoming nervous about sending their children back to classes in the fall, the White House is now blocking officials from the Centers for Disease Control from appearing at a hearing next week on reopening schools. The chairman of the committee said in a tweet, it is alarming that the Trump administration is preventing the CDC from appearing before the committee at a time when its expertise and guidance is so critical to the health and safety of students, parents, and educators. The move comes as the CDC has postponed its plan to release proposals for reopening classrooms. Earlier this week, the CDC director was touting mask use as critical to healthy schools.
To me, face coverings are the key. If you really look at it, the data is really clear. They work.
The administration's push to reopen schools is flying in the face of stunning spikes in cases across the U.S. Dr. Anthony Fauci said part of the problem is that some states simply opened up too quickly.
We put out guidelines from the coronavirus task force that had what's called a gateway. If you pass that gateway, you would then go to phase 1. And if you were there at a certain amount of time and the cases were steady and going down, you could go to phase 2 and phase 3. So when you look at that, clearly, there are some states that actually skipped over one or more of those, what you call benchmarks or checkpoints.
An undisclosed document drafted by the Coronavirus Task Force and obtained by the Center for Public Integrity recommended that 18 states roll back their reopening plans. But that would mean going against the president, who said he's determined to keep those kinds of rollbacks from happening.
And now we're open, and we want to stay open, and we will stay open. We're not closing. We'll put out the fires as they come out.
A new ABC Washington Post poll found only 38% of Americans approve of Mr. Trump's handling of the virus, down from where that number stood in May, and nearly 2/3 now say they don't really trust what he says about the pandemic.
I'm great. How are you?
That has White House officials wondering out loud whether the president should appear more engaged.
His approval rating on the pandemic was higher when he was at the podium. It was 51% in March. And I think people want to hear from the President of the United States. He still addresses it. He still talks about vaccine and therapeutics development.
But the president appears to have moved on, holding events that aren't related to the virus and sticking to topics that score points with his base.
Dishwashers, you didn't have any water, so the people that do the dishes, you press it and it goes again, and you do it again and again. So you might as well give them the water because you'll end up using less water.
Says a lot, folks, doesn't it? It says a lot. The scary part about this, I'm sorry, Alex, I missed what you said. I have read that gaithers may not be as effective as a mask. It depends on how thick the material is and how densely woven it is. I don't have a gaither, haven't seen one, do a blow out the candle test. That's one of the reasons I've gotten one. You got a point. I mean, the gator I have is really on the thick side, but I like it just, well, number one, it's Cap. It's Captain America, so anything Marvel related usually gets my attention. But you are right, Alex. I mean, there are some gators that are just really thin, and then you have the ones that just have a, kind of a thicker fabric to them. But you definitely have a point about that. Um, but getting back to it, it's just amazing to me now. Now Dorito has sat there and said about he is not going to let the CDC, which is what one of the reasons I wanted to play the video, was that he wasn't going to allow the CDC to testify before Congress. Keep in mind, Trump has had a beef with the CDC because they don't echo what he's saying. When they say cases have increased, Dorito has sat there and said cases went down. CDC sat there and said some states have opened too early. Dorito was crying. And then at the same time, he has now decided, because I keep on saying this, guys, remember those 4th of July gatherings everybody had, that everybody was together and everybody was so close in some areas? Yeah, though you do know it takes about 2 weeks for coronavirus cases to show up. What we saw beforehand, I'm just saying, with July 4th being away from a couple of weeks, we're now a few weeks away from the July now. I'm just waiting for those numbers to increase because chances are they actually will. But it is amazing to me that he will not allow the CDC to testify because he believes that he and his administration have done right about handling this coronavirus situation. They have not. And you know how Trump is. He wants to be the smartest person in the room, even though he fails miserably. So it's not only that, but there's also another story which they didn't say in there, was that all the coronavirus case information that the CDC used to get, now the White House has stepped in and said that we're going to get that information. So now the CDC does not get the U.S. coronavirus case information. It goes straight to the White House. You know how we sat there and said we worried about having one place having too much information and control? You're now seeing it from the Republican side, especially with a guy who right now needs the presidency. This is what it all comes down to, folks. I hate to break it to you, but Trump doesn't, for all those that already don't know, Trump doesn't care about you. He cares about election number 2. Why? Because he needs the seat of the presidency. Why does he need the seat of the presidency? For this reason alone.
Office, I'll produce my tax returns, absolutely.
Tax returns are very complicated. I have many, many companies. I have, tremendously, I have a very complex system of taxes. We'll make a determination over the next couple of months. It's very complicated.
I don't mind releasing. I'm under a routine audit, and it'll be released. And as soon as the audit's finished, it'll be released.
The White House response is that he's not going to release his tax returns. We litigated this all through the election. People didn't care.
If I were finished with the audit, I would have an open mind to it. I would say that. But I don't want to do it during the audit. Now the House goes and starts subpoenaing. They want to know every deal I've ever done. I say it's enough.
There are 5,000 DAs and assistant district attorneys throughout the United States. Could you imagine if the President of the United States was subject to individual investigations by DAs for whatever reason they so choose?
And the funny part of why I said that he needs the presidency is because that man's house of cards will eventually be exposed. There is no ifs, ands, or buts beyond that, especially in that case. I keep on saying beforehand, folks, the whole idea, like I said, they haven't given up on tax returns. It might not get reported as much, but just a few days ago, the Supreme Court actually ruled that Donald Trump wasn't immune from having his tax returns. He tried to sit there and state that he had full immunity because, again, this goes back to the Department of Justice, whose opinion, not law, whose opinion is they will not indict or investigate a sitting president. Again, that's the Department of Justice. It's not a law. It is an opinion. And we all know Trump's personal attorney slash the Attorney General William Barr will not do anything in the moment without the behest of the president. So again, that's why I say it's more important now that DAs, especially the Manhattan District Attorneys, are now going after Trump's tax returns, and now the Supreme Court has already ruled that yes, that Trump's excuse for not being able to release those tax returns was actually shot down. Now, does that mean that Trump's going to lawyer the crap out of it again? Because yes, it actually goes back down to the lower courts and for appeals. But it just shows off the bat that who knew that a Supreme Court where two of the scratch that. Two of the Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brian Kavanaugh, two Trump Supreme Court appointees have ruled against him. Now I thought for a second they were going to rule for him because how they did Florida this week was messed up as well. However, what is more scary about the coronavirus is the simple fact that the push to put kids in school is still happening, and I know this lady McDaniel, the new press secretary Kayleigh McEnany. I know she's new, but you know when you say something like this, it just kind of says that you were hired by Trump.
Districts, at least in Virginia, for example, last night, deciding to go online only. What does the president say to parents out there who are now going, okay, what do I do with my kids?
Yeah, the president has said unmistakably that he wants schools to open, and I was just in the Oval talking to him about that. And when he says open, he means open and full, kids being able to attend each and every day at their school. The science should not stand in the way of this. And as Dr. Scott Atlas said, I thought this was a good quote. Of course we can do it. Everyone else in the Western world, our peer nations, are doing it. We are the outlier here. The science is very clear on this, that, you know, for instance, you look at the JAMA pediatric study of 46 pediatric hospitals in North America that said the risk of critical illness from COVID is far less for children than that of seasonal flu. The science is on our side here, and we encourage for localities and states to just simply follow the science, open our schools. It's very damaging to our children.
Did y'all? Okay. Y'all heard what I heard, right? She sat there and said, because she actually quoting, science should not stand in the way of opening schools. And then cited scientific unproven facts that say that it's okay to open our schools. But science should not stand in the way of our schools. You know what? I cringed when I heard that. That again, the Trump organization and those that like-minded against him think that it's perfectly okay to send your children to school. In a high coronavirus case world, they think it is okay for you to send your children to school. That alone should be alarming. The simple fact that the U.S. Coalition of Educators, as well as the Department of Education, well, minus Betsy DeVos because she has no idea what she's doing. She just basically paid for her seat. Every teacher is saying no. This is a terrible idea. The whole idea of trying to bring our kids back to school. Like I said, I understand kids have not been in school since March. I get it. I understand it. But instead of us trying to force everything back to what we consider normal, why are we not trying to find alternative ways of teaching? I've been saying this since the last couple of podcasts. If we invested more in our education, like if the Department of Education actually invested more money, actually paid these teachers more, expanded on the fact of remote learning. It's amazing. We have this technology that allows us to communicate anywhere, to, you know, pass on memes, to engage with each other, because we do it all the time. Whether it's Facebook, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, Snapchat, however you choose to communicate. If we can find ways of communication that way, why are we not expanding on our education that way? Instead of, You know, and my whole thing is like some schools, and I'll be honest, some schools have actually gotten that idea. Um, some charter and private schools have went straight to remote learning. Every child has a laptop or iPad or whatnot, and they have internet access. The teacher still continues to teach the kid from home, and in some of it's self-styled learning. Some of it is that the child and their parent kind of go through these established videos that teachers have already done to continue to keep the child learning and things of that nature, keeping up with progress reports. Other schools have figured out how to educate children in this time. The majority of us, unfortunately, that still go through public education, that's where the hindrance is. And it is amazing that we are not investing more in technology to cover this gap. Because just like the stimulus checks, which I'll talk about in a little while, it is amazing to me that when the American people need help, that the Congress's answer or answer to their pleas is simply, let's hurry up and get you back to work as humanly possible. And we all know how that worked out. But moving right along, guys, there is some news about really some ongoing cases right now. We're gonna start with the one that's actually happened in Indiana, where a black man was. They keep saying allegedly about to get lynched, but well, watch the video, you'll see.
After a black man said a group of white men allegedly threatened to get a noose. Videos of the incident have gone viral, and it is difficult to watch. Here's Alex Perez.
Tonight, investigations underway in Indiana after this disturbing video posted on social media showing a group of white men attacking a black man, 36-year-old Vox Booker.
Let him go, dude.
The men hurling racist slurs and pinning Booker against a tree.
One of the gentlemen yells to his friend to get a noose. I thought these individuals were literally going to lynch me.
The ordeal unfolding July 4th at Lake Monroe near Bloomington, Indiana. Booker says he and his friend, who's white, were headed to the public beach when he says the men accused him of trespassing on private property. Booker says he tried to calmly talk to them but was assaulted.
I'm struggling to breathe. I can feel the weight of these gentlemen on top of me.
Booker says what saved him was that his friends and bystanders refused to leave. The county prosecutor saying she's waiting for investigators to turn the case in for review, but tonight we've learned the FBI is opening a hate crime investigation.
Let him go, dude.
I just see so many images pass through my mind of George Floyd, of the countless black people we've seen be killed in horrible ways. And I think to myself, am I going to be them?
And David, there was a protest supporting Vox Booker last night that turned violent after a car drove into the crowd of demonstrators. 2 of those demonstrators were injured. Authorities tonight are still searching for the driver of that.
That's crazy, isn't it? That I know we still say allegedly, because I'm sorry, when they got him pinned up saying you're on private property, and the way they have that man hemmed up, and I'm just sitting there thinking to myself, it is not beyond the realm of possibility that lynching, because like I said, we already had about 3 cases out there where black people have been lynched, and immediately they call it suicide. And I'm like, oh no, and I mean, thank goodness he's all right. But at the same time, I keep stressing, brothers, don't go rolling by yourselves, even though he had a white friend. I'm glad he's alive, but if it was me, and I saw one of my buddies get hit up like that, click, regulate. Or if I ain't got nothing, or if I don't have the one time on me, I'm finding some tree branches. I'm finding some branches and I'm swinging, because it's that type of fear. I mean, there are a lot of fears that the African American community has. That one right there is definitely up on the top 5. And that man right there, I'm sorry, I mean, yeah, fight, claw, scratch, bite, do whatever you gotta do to keep yourself alive. But for them to sit there and say, at the end of it all is that, we're now searching if it's a hate crime. If the man, like I said, there's I don't know if there's video or not. It's still allegedly, they're still out there saying if there's a video, if he sat there and said, get a rope because we're about to hang him. If they say get a rope or get a noose, yeah, definitely prosecute. But I say they should prosecute anyway because, again, that's not private property. They were in a public park area. There's no such thing as private property out there. On top of that, they illegally restrained them, so therefore they're already going to be brought up on charges anyway. But I'm just saying, bro, if you see a black dude hemmed up like that, it is hard to get to the point to where if I just see a black dude get hemmed up like that, and they, you know, people like that have no issue holding them, I'm liable to jump in, just sit there and say no, not again. Honestly, in that sense of just, you know, some white folks are just too comfortable with doing those types of actions. But you know what the funny part is? They only do it when you're by yourself. They'll never do it when there's more than one of us. I kid you not. And the thing about it is, it is frustrating. It really is. And what's fucked up is that these white people don't own the land in the slightest. They were drunk as shit. When 911 was called, they essentially said it's not our jurisdiction. And hang on a second. And transferred to the fucking park range. The whole police department area was in on it. Yeah, you were exactly right, man. But moving right along, guys, also with an update on Breonna Taylor. This also is it's cringy. So letting you guys know, viewer discretion is definitely advised on this one because the information that they're finding out as this case is being investigated is it's on some Law and Order stuff. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Louisville police shot and killed Breonna Taylor in her apartment. This information raises new questions about the officer's conduct that night. Here's CBS's Jeff Pegues.
CBS News has confirmed that after being shot 5 times, Breonna Taylor was alive, but struggling to breathe. In a revised lawsuit filed on behalf of Taylor's family, attorneys allege that Taylor was left to die. They say that she was not killed immediately, that she lived for another 5 to 6 minutes before succumbing to her injuries on the floor of her home.
Turn around, face away!
Cell phone video released last week shows officers moments after the shooting with their guns drawn, arresting Taylor's boyfriend, Kenneth Walker, who later told investigators that he thought the cops were intruders.
The door comes off the hinges, so I just let off one shot. I still can't see who it is or anything.
One of the officers involved, John Mattingly, described how he fired back.
And so I just returned fire. I got 4 rounds off, and it was simultaneous. It's boom, 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 boom.
The March 13th raid remains under investigation by the FBI and the Kentucky State Attorney General. Police targeted the home erroneously, believing that it was being used by a drug dealer to receive packages. Taylor's death has been a rallying cry for protest across Louisville and the country. Demonstrators have called for criminal charges against the officers involved.
So that's a new piece of evidence, guys, that of course for Breonna Taylor, it is a terrible, terrible story because again, that's police negligence about not checking which home to go into, having a no-knock warrant, which means that police do not have to identify themselves. They can just bum rush the door legally. Well, now no-knock warrants are actually banned in the state of Kentucky. But it's a simple fact of the matter that now that piece of evidence is that she may have not died instantly, but she could have been alive for several more minutes. Now, that is sad that she wasn't actually, it's sad that it even had to happen, but it's even more sad that she now could have actually possibly survived. And at the same time, this now makes the murder charges indicted against those officers all the more apparent, because now we've now jumped. I mean, if they knew that she was alive and allowed her to die, then that just now has become first-degree murder. And even though they fired one officer, which I still say is still redundant that they fired him, I mean, yes, all 3 should be fired because, I mean, from an internal investigation standpoint, there's no justification as far as what they did. Even for the homeowner, I don't blame the homeowner to this. I mean, I've been saying this. I don't blame the homeowner for firing a shot because if somebody breaks into my door, yeah, I'm shooting too. and you don't announce yourself, I'm shooting right along with you. So I cannot blame the guy who was Breonna Taylor's boyfriend for sitting there saying I fired off a shot. I know who I was looking at. They certainly didn't announce themselves. So I don't feel bad about that. When in his standpoint, I'm completely defend him. But again, that's just, like I said, as stories go on, we are going to be dedicated to following that and still bringing that forward, even though for the most part, they're not trending. Like I could go into a whole thing of why, Black Lives Matter is not trending anymore just because some businesses have stopped doing it. But we won't stop here as far as following the stories. Speaking of stories that we're still following, we do have some information from Ahmaud Arbery's case about bail being denied for one of the three people. They actually should be not for all three, but here it is.
Arbery, all three men charged in connection with this killing as he jogged through their Georgia neighborhood, pleaded not guilty today. ABC's Chief Justice correspondent Pierre Thomas with the emotional testimony in court.
In dramatic courtroom testimony, Ahmaud Arbery's mother today pleading for one of the men charged with murdering her son to remain in jail pending trial.
He did not allow my son to go home.
Arbery was fatally shot while jogging in February after two white men, Gregory and Travis McMichael, chased him down. Arbery's mother at the bond hearing saying she's still living in pain and fear.
I fear running into all the three of the men that murdered my son.
William Bryan, who taped the shooting and allegedly tried to block Arbery as he ran, seeking bond today. Bryan's attorney irritated that the lawyer for the family had a mask with the name George Floyd on it.
If we are permitted to wear masks making political statements, then Mr. Evans and I in this home should be free to wear not a mask.
The judge's focus, health, not politics.
All that we are asking the lawyers and those that are in this courthouse to do is comply with public health guidelines.
Tom, all three men pleaded not guilty and bail for Bryan was denied. Today, the McMichaels did not argue for bond. Tom?
Pierre, thank you.
Well, there is some news. There is some good news out there. They actually should remain in jail. I think they should remain in jail until they actually have their trial. Just because the fact of the matter is that they, obviously have the means and whatnot. And then trust me, there are plenty of coalitions out there. Even though they're silent, there are plenty of coalitions out there that will gladly turn around and sit there and say, oh, we need to help this said police officer because of what they're being put into. We need to help this conscientious white person because of what happened. I said, trust me, they're out there because the same people that actually helped out George Zimmerman are the same people that will help out these cops. You think I'm kidding? But moving right along, like I said, what Breonna Taylor and George Floyd those tragedies have done is actually open us up to a lot more stories we didn't know about. Main importantly, this story out of Jefferson Parish in Louisiana, which a mother is still trying to get answers on why her son was shot.
He couldn't believe it. The phone call no mother wants to hear.
I didn't know if he was alive or not. They just say he was brought in with a gunshot wound.
Did they mention that it was a deputy that had shot?
Not at this point, no one said anything. No one spoke up to say an officer shot my child.
It was March. Her son, 14-year-old Tramal McGee, was in the hospital. He'd been riding with a group of friends in a car that had been reported stolen, though McGee says he didn't know that. Deputies tried to stop the car in this New Orleans suburb. That's when the driver stopped, bailed out of the car, and the three teenagers started running. McGee jumped this fence, and deputies caught up with him as he tried to crawl underneath that shed in the backyard.
Did you realize that the officers had drawn their weapons?
Mm-mm.
Where did he shoot you?
In my back. Right here.
The original incident report, viewed by NBC News, did not mention the officer-involved shooting. 3 months later, Tramal was charged with resisting an officer by flight.
I'd like anybody to be able to come forward.
In his only public statement on the incident, Jefferson Parish Sheriff Joe Lapinto said the agency was investigating.
Juvenile records are protected a little bit different. It's not something that's being hidden. I mean, it was, truthfully, I didn't know if it was reported or not reported 3 months ago.
But Tiffany McGee says she's struggled to get answers about what happened that night.
We haven't had any officer-involved shooting.
She recorded what she says were her interactions with the sheriff's office, like this one in May.
Look at your sign-in books.
Not with a taser.
With a firearm, sir. My son has a bullet wound that is never going to go away at 14 years old. For you to stand in my face and tell me you don't remember or not even you don't remember, you didn't know, I can't know. That didn't sit well with my spirit. So it wasn't about to just stop there.
Put your fist in the air!
She's now one of several families in the parish calling for change. NBC News found that in the last 5 years, at least 12 black and Latino men and boys have died during encounters with the sheriff's office. But the sheriff has rejected calls to use buddy cameras, citing cost. It's a key reform that neighboring New Orleans has embraced.
Absolutely no justification for it.
Attorney Ronald Haley is representing the family.
Deadly force should only be used in the most extreme cases. And I'm sorry, a 14-year-old child laying on the ground trying to comply is absolutely, objectively, no reason to use deadly force at all.
What do you say to the people looking at this case who might think, okay, but why do you run?
Running isn't a death penalty. There is no justification for shooting an unarmed child in the back. There isn't. There isn't.
The sheriff's office declined our request for an on-camera interview, citing child privacy laws. The office also declined to answer questions about policies and in-custody deaths. Tiffany McGee says she won't stop pushing.
I always used to say, once I get me a voice and be heard, I'm gonna let it be heard.
One mother who would not stay silent. Gabe Gutierrez, NBC News.
Crazy, isn't it? That, like I said before, as these stories do come out, we are finding out more and more that there is some issues with law enforcement, especially in certain areas. Now, Jefferson Parish in Louisiana, where they sat there and said that the sheriff there is really more like the commissioner of the police, which is basically the highest thing in the law enforcement in the city. And in Jefferson Parish, if you are the sheriff there, then it's almost no different than you being the chief of police. And like I said, there is no excuse for why a 14-year-old was shot in the back, which thankfully he survived, because most encounter rates with black men and police when they draw guns is definitely not in our favor. And this 14-year-old is still alive, and thank goodness for that. But I don't blame his mom. It's like, okay, he ran away from you because he was in a stolen car that he had no knowledge of. What was the reason of shooting him? Because he had no weapon on him. And an officer I'm like, whenever an officer draws their weapon, they have to explain, they have to have justification not only for drawing, but for shooting. And I would more than love to hear that why shooting a 14-year-old in the back was justified. Even more so that the sheriff's office will like to sit behind child privacy laws and things of that nature, but don't have body cams. So you expect us to take your word as gold, and yet still understand the reason why police reform is needed and why defund the police needs to keep going. And I keep explaining about defund the police. Defund the police does not mean that we are just simply disbanding the police. No, defund the police means that we are now demilitarizing them. We are now ensuring that they are actually getting more training, including de-escalation and negotiations. We are pushing for more civilian oversight, in which they do have to answer to a civilian oversight committee as far as any and all actions. At the same time, any investigations are actually done by a federal level. They are not actually being done by their own precincts. A lot, and I'll tell you right there, all of that reasonable, and yet the blue line, as they love to call themselves, don't like the fact that we're pointing out that we don't like the fact that they're pointing out they're doing a bad job. And as Chris Rock said it best, there are just some areas to where we cannot have bad jobs. We cannot have bad people doing their jobs. I mean, you wouldn't want a pilot that crashes in the mountains to be on your flight, right? You want a person that's smooth, that's actually been doing it for a while. In the same sense, an officer. You don't want an officer that's trigger happy against black people. No, you want an officer that's been thoroughly trained, because let's be honest with you, military police are trained better than normal law enforcement. Because for normal law enforcement, you only have to be in a police academy for 6 months. A hairstylist, a nail technician, a lawyer, anything else above the board, you have to be longer in school for that than you do for law enforcement. 6 months. 6 months, and you're allowed to just enforce the law and carry a gun, and we're supposed to trust you. Right. Speaking of things that I don't trust, of course, it goes back again with these other stories coming out. There was actually an encounter that's still ongoing in this case, but this guy filmed his encounter with the police, and it was disturbing.
It says that 2 cops yanked him out of the car that he was in, and they cuffed him for having vegetation in the car. He was Facebooking it live when it happened.
What caught my attention was this vegetation stuff right here.
That ain't got nothing.
So,
what is you vegetation? Let me see that. What? That's tree stuff, man. Test it. That gotta be from the tree, man.
Okay.
Y'all put me on for no.
All right, hold on just a minute. Let me put this in the bag real quick. Step on that for me.
Sir, do you have a reason
I do.
for me?
I got the vegetation in the window.
That's from the tree, sir. I don't even smoke.
Okay, I'll test it here in a little bit, okay?
No, you gotta test it right now.
I ain't gotta test it right now. I need you to step out for me.
Step out for what? Sir, no. Facebook, y'all see that, right?
Oh, wow. This happened near Wichita last week, and we're now seeing the video. Now, Rudy Samuel says at first the cops told him that he had failed to put his turn signal on within 100 feet of turning. And he says that they then mentioned the vegetation on the window. Well, a rep for a group that posted the video says that police officers didn't find any suspicious substances in the car, nor did they test it. A police department rep wouldn't comment yet on that, but did say that the incident.
Again, crazy. It is crazy that vegetation. We're gonna bring you in for vegetation, and he picks up something off the edge, and he never says what it was. He never tested or anything of that nature. So it's like, wait a second, what are we really testing here? And it's amazing to me that he didn't even go so far as to sit there and say, okay.
Disagreement.
Oh, sorry. He didn't even go as far as to sit there and say, well, you know, I got you for this vegetation, and then comes back and says, well, come out the car. So it's like, wait a second. So he's like, dude, it's not vegetation. I've been smoking. And yet they feel the need to yank him out the car. Even more so when you see video like this, again, where law enforcement definitely needs a recheck.
Dead wrong.
I'm giving you to the count of 3. This video from April of 2019 showing a heated exchange between Derek Thompson and Virginia State Trooper Charles Hewitt. You filmed the whole thing.
I'm being threatened
No,
right now.
I'm giving you a
and
chance.
I am not doing anything.
Thompson pulled over for having an expired inspection decal. The trooper insisting Thompson exit the car, saying it reeked of marijuana.
Okay. My hands are up. One hand on this camera. My seatbelt is being arrested.
Thompson stays put, recording it all, a video that's now gone viral. Trooper Hewitt then smiles at the camera and says,
Watch the show. My life is in danger. My life is in danger.
Pulling Thompson from the car by his neck. How do you like that? Huh?
He's smiling for the camera. He appears to be hamming it up. That's what makes this video truly terrifying.
State police also finding Thompson was driving with a suspended license. Still, Timothy Williams, a retired Los Angeles detective, now an expert on officer conduct cases, says those reasons don't warrant Hewitt's actions.
The force that you saw there, in my opinion, was totally excessive. It didn't have to happen. This was, again, an infraction.
Thompson didn't report what happened until just recently. Here's his attorney, Joshua Ehrlich.
This is a video of his worst moment, and you know he was concerned, and you know for good reason, that this is not something that he wanted to publicize.
This photo taken by Thompson a few days after the incident. This week, the attorney sent a letter to Attorney General Mark Herring demanding charges for Trooper Hewitt.
There should be some disciplinary action taken because what he did was wrong, dead wrong.
And that's crazy. And even though that was back in 2019, it's still the simple fact of the matter is just that you saw an officer smile and say, "We enjoy the show, folks," and yanked him out the car. Now, of course, they try to justify, well, he had expired tags, he's driving on suspended license. Okay, did that justify him getting yanked out the car? I mean, the officer almost to the point to where he was too ready to he was too ready to do something that he was looking forward to. And when you deal with people like that, it just shows all too well. And again, like I said, with this whole George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, what that has opened the door on is actually showing a very dark side of a lot of things that need to change around here. But even more so, where I keep on going back to Dorito because let's be honest, he was the catalyst. I still say for all of this. He said something that was echoed, and I keep on saying this. This is honestly more of a white supremacist remark. As soon as it plays.
Trump called the killing of George Floyd by police terrible, but hit back when asked about the underlying issue of deadly use of force by police.
Why are African Americans still dying at the hands of law enforcement in this country?
And so are white people. So are white people. What a terrible question to ask. So are white people. More white people, by the way. More white people.
The president also defending the display of the Confederate flag.
You understand why the flag is a painful symbol for many people because it's a reminder of slavery.
Well, people love it, and I know people that like the Confederate flag and they're not thinking about slavery. I just think it's freedom of speech, whether it's Confederate flags or Black Lives Matter or anything else you want to talk about. It's freedom of speech.
Those comments coming as the president faces fresh fallout over his coronavirus response in the form of an extraordinary rebuke from 4 former heads of the CDC.
Now, I was going to stop that video right there just because this goes into the fact of what we talked about, where I guess Trump felt slighted because the CDC didn't agree with him, in which, four ex-CDC chiefs all said the same thing about the entire way he's handled the coronavirus situation. But before that, he turned around and sat there and said that, again, he is saying something that's considered a very old rhetoric as far as what police kill more whites than blacks. He's referring back to a 2008 study that that conservatives love to say. Back in 2008, they actually did a study where it showed at the time a very small, and I do mean small, indication that police were killing more white people than black people. It did not take into the fact the ramifications of across urban areas, only in a certain wide state location, meaning that the data was too small to sit there and aggregate or be able to make that term valid. That police kill more whites than blacks. But again, conservatives love to sit there and still in this point, when we sit there and say, why is it that you're sitting there defending this? And it's like, well, it's a whole thing of, especially in the line of when everyone comes to police black people, well, white people get killed by police too. And the thing that always has annoyed me at the same time has surprised me is that no matter what, there are some out there that feel that they have to somehow be able to relate themselves to a situation they have nothing to do with. Case in point, if black people are getting shot by police, well, white people get shot by police too. If black people get stopped multiple times, well, white people do too. And I'm just thinking to myself, for a group of people that had a 400-year head start and literally have all the entire game, if you will, is shifted in your favor. Why is it that when another minority points out inequality and things of that nature, y'all were quick to sit there and say me too? Not to get away from the Me Too movement, but y'all are always quick to say me too. And I scratch my head over this like, this has nothing to do with you. And again, Trump at this point is still pleasing his voter base because his voter base loves this because he is basically their wet dream in real life. So again, we really shouldn't be surprised by what Dorito says because at this point, he needs that presidency to keep himself and his family out of jail. As said by his niece who came out with that book, and she's spilling all the tea and a clinical psychologist who's also Trump's niece. Oh, that's going to be a fun book to read. But anyway, moving right along, guys. As I said, voting is coming up because let's be honest, we're getting closer to the election, and yet somehow Election Day is still not a federal holiday. Somehow we haven't expanded mail-in voting. Somehow we have not yet figured out an app that we can put on our smartphones to where we can actually vote remotely if need be. Florida actually had the right idea at one point when they sat there and said to felons that, hey, as long as you fulfilled your run, your bid, then yeah, your voting rights are restored. And I thought it was cool because Florida has over 2 million felons that would love to vote. And I thought it would be great because that means their voice can be heard. And I keep saying this, things do change when voting until the Supreme Court decided to do something I thought they'd never do.
Time critical battleground Florida with more than 1 million potential new voters, convicted felons. Like 54-year-old Judy Bolden, who lost her voting rights after she was convicted for drug trafficking. Now free, she plans to vote for the first time in her life.
It made me feel worthless. Like I wasn't even a citizen of the United States.
Because you could not vote?
Because I couldn't vote. My voice couldn't be heard.
And now?
And now I feel vindicated.
But not so fast, says Florida Governor Ron
Once
DeSantis.
they have completed their sentence.
So those are the things that are being litigated. He challenged a state constitutional amendment approved by Florida voters 2 years ago that restored voting rights to felons who complete all terms of their sentence, except for felons who committed murder or sexual battery. The governor says all terms means just that.
If you were robbed and someone's convicted of taking, $3,000 out of your house and they were ordered to pay you $3,000 of restitution and they didn't do it, did they complete the sentence?
On Thursday, the U.S. Supreme Court sided with Governor DeSantis, effectively preventing felons from voting in November unless they pay off what they owe. But critics fighting for the right to vote say requiring payments is just a twist on old Jim Crow laws.
Yes. That is a poll tax.
Desmond Meade spent 3 years in prison on a drug charge, then went to law school.
I think that those who don't want people like me to be able to vote are people that, first of all, think that people who have felony convictions are going to vote one particular party over the other, particularly Democrat Party.
A federal judge had agreed that Florida's pay-to-vote system was inherently unfair, writing the overwhelming majority of felons will be unable to pay. Republican State Representative Jamie Grant says this is not about ex-felons registering as Democrats.
I think it is absolutely gross to suggest that because somebody has a certain skin color or somebody has committed a felon, that they are going to align with a certain political demographic.
Tonight, a problem. Florida elections officials have kept no records of felons who are already registered to vote but are yet to pay back money they owe. A state with a history of messy elections, potentially headed.
Yeah, a state which you'll never forget, because that same state got Bush the second. Bush 2.0 got elected from him, and of course also helped to elect Dorito. Is now sitting there saying that after they voted to restore felons' rights, voting rights, are now saying that, well, you paid everybody back that you owe. And they're right. That is a poll tax. That is a poll tax just because you did, like they said before, there are going to be some felons that'll never be able to pay back what they've owed. Now, did they do their time and pay their debt to society? Okay, cool. If you did your 5 to 10 years and you completed it and you're out, and as long as you didn't kill anybody, as long as you didn't sexually assault anybody, you can vote. That should be the end of it. It honestly should be right there saying, you know what, you can vote, point blank and period. So it amazes me now that, of course, as the Republicans, and I say this and I say this very heavily because I'm speaking from a conceptual fact. Republicans are doing everything they can to control the voting in order to secure that Dorito stays in office. They are closing polling areas to where a large amount of people, especially if you're in a heavy populated urban area, urban meaning black people, if you're in a large urban area to where there's only one polling place for about 500,000 black people, it'll make it very hard to actually vote within that time frame. The fact that we still don't have an election day as a federal holiday will still make it difficult because folks somehow still have to work and then have to go to polling places, which will even be more scarier now just because of coronavirus. Nobody wants to be that close in order to actually do a vote, or they might go ahead and risk it. I know I will. I know I will go ahead and risk it. I'll make sure that I'm wearing a mask and doing social distancing the best I can because, I'm sorry, we do need to vote. At the same time, again, it is a poll tax. The whole idea of, well, you did your bid, you did this, yada, yada, yada. but you still owe that said person that you robbed $5,000. So until that's paid off to them, well, you can't vote. On top of that, it's like, oh, so we don't really have a record of all those who have voted, all those who have paid off their people versus who don't. So 9 times out of 10, Florida's just gonna turn around and be like, we're gonna whitewash the whole entire thing and say all y'all didn't pay, so all of you can't vote. And I think that is completely and utterly messed up as far as that, considering that it was made an amendment back in 2008, and it should be upheld as such. But Governor DeSantis, who I like to call the Trump cheerleader next to Lindsey and Mitch McConnell, is going to be doing his marching orders. Because trust me, Ron DeSantis doesn't do anything without his daddy's approval. Yes, I said it. But moving right along, guys. There's a few more stories before we get to our feel good segment. Treasury Mnuchin. I keep on wanting to say Munchkin. I don't keep on wanting to say Munich, but at the same time, he's got a face that you just want to punch. Cistern says that the Paycheck Protection Program, which was supposed to help small businesses out, which was actually a failure. He is now saying, and I wish I could make this up, that not only do the loans can be forgiven, is that now he's asking for more money to basically be put toward the Treasury to keep the program going. Now, keep in mind, the Personal Paycheck Protection Program was supposed to help small businesses retain their employment by giving them a loan that they could pay back or, eventually be forgiven if circumstances met. Keep in mind that the only people of these loans that have been received have been honestly major corporations. I mean, you have restaurant chains like Ruth Chris actually had a personal payment protection loan. Mitch McConnell's wife got a loan. Kanye West, for some odd reasons beyond my comprehension, got a loan. I mean, if you really look down the list, even the Roman Catholic Church, those that are affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church, got loans. Churches got loans. And again, this should tell you everything you should want to know. Just the simple fact of the matter is just that this PPP loan is honestly, it's not working. And it's not working toward the people they want to say. This is only benefiting everybody that has supported Trump. That's what that loan really suggests to me. That that a majority of these people who actually supported Trump and were friends of him are the ones that got the loans, while you still have plenty of companies out there who have yet to actually receive their answer back on their paperwork because, again, the money's out ran again. And for all those that are wondering about a second stimulus check, because I was asked that this week, it is still, unfortunately, still being talked about. And the reason why is because the Democrats and Republicans basically are having a head-to-head argument. And honestly, if anything were to actually happen, then it probably would not happen until end of August. But the one thing that I said that the reason why they're butting heads so much is because the simple fact of the matter is it just cannot be a straight out bill for just people. They have to add stuff to it. Again, like in this one thing right now, Mitch McConnell is pretty much saying that he wants liability protection to be included in this bill. Liability protection. Now, for all those that are wondering what I mean by that, is because if you haven't noticed with a few places that you work at, you are probably given a waiver, and that waiver simply sits there and says, if you get sick, it is your fault. You can't sue us. I'm pretty sure, I mean, it doesn't say it verbatim, but pretty much the entire sentence of it is just that, if you get sick, it's not our fault. So, a lot of places are adapting that just because they're now seeing a whole bunch of small claims being brought forward where people have gotten sick because they've had no choice. Because here's the thing, a lot of people who are essential workers have to risk their lives to go in here and work. They can't sit there and say they can't sit there and say, well, I don't feel like working, or circumstances like money or not having enough to cover bills will force people to sit there and make a dangerous choices involving their lives and people around them. And Mitch McConnell's answer to all this is, oh, well, we're not going to extend the emergency payment, the emergency unemployment payment, which again runs out the end of this month. So we're actually a couple weeks away from that. He's not thinking about extending that unemployment. He wants to basically extend protection out to companies because he knows as people will go back to work or try to go back to work, that these cases will increase, and if these people get sick, then they're going to sue. So he's not thinking about, and again, Kentucky. which you've done so well so far. You've done so well. Now we need you to go ahead and get rid of Mitch McConnell. But again, it's this whole idea of he rather would protect the companies than protect the people. And I'm sorry, Kentucky, you guys have your senator is the richest person in Congress, and you are like the next five steps from the bottom of the lowest of the poorest countries in the United States. Mississippi is higher than you, and that should say a lot. But again, we'll see come November. But that's all the stories I got, guys. So we're going to get into our feel good news segment. And like I said on How the Frack We Got Here, we do talk a lot about the stuff that is not always doom and gloom, but sometimes just, not really kind of on the you're really bringing me down for a Saturday type feel. And we want to leave y'all on a good note. We want to sit there and, put a smile on your step. It is Saturday. I almost said Friday. It is Saturday. The sun is shining, at least in Tennessee it is. And some places it's still on God's hot plate. So if you're out and about and it's 100 degrees outside, please be safe. Be mindful of where you are. Please stay hydrated and still wear your face mask, things of that nature. But that being said, for the feel good news stories, I call it the celebrity edition because it seems that these 3 stories I have are all celebrities. Even more so where apparently, Tempo Girl, I like to call her Tempo Girl because I like that song. Slow songs, was it slow songs off of Skinny Hoes? I'm a thick one, I need tempo. Hey, Lizzo's hot. I'm not gonna say I got nothing against that woman. But anyway, Lizzo decided that she wanted to do something nice for a certain hospital, and she sent this video.
Thank you so much for everything you guys are doing to fight during this pandemic, to make sure that we're healthy and that we're alive. You guys are really putting yourselves out there on the front line, so the least I could do was give you guys some lunch.
That singer and rapper Lizzo on Facebook giving a shout out and lunch to the 100 employees in the COVID units at Baptist Memorial DeSoto. And take a look at this picture. It's of the lunch provided to that team. This isn't the first time Lizzo, by the way, has picked a team at random to support either.
And I thought that was pretty cool. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a grand gesture. I think that it's just cool that, as celebrities do have a lot more ability and money and time. And I thought that was cool that, she picks a place where she can help out and say, it's not much, but here's my way of saying thank you. And I thought that was cool. Like I said, if it was me and I was rich, I'm going around like Batman and being like, here's lunch. I would probably be, not in the 30-year-old smoker way, but just, I'm Batman. I'll show myself out. Anyway, last 2 stories I got. I'm going to start with this one because my buddy over at comicbook.com, Brandon B.D. Davis, put me onto this one. So shout out to you, Brandon. And I love the fact that, some people honestly, when they play a role, they play a role. But some people play a role that just suits them. And you can't help in this one because Chris Evans, Captain America, for all those that know him, did something I thought was really good for this boy who decided to defend his sister, and I thought this needs to be definitely played.
A very courageous 6-year-old boy being hailed as a hero after saving his sister from a charging dog. Bridger Walker was brutally attacked by a German Shepherd when he jumped in front of it to shield his 4-year-old sister. You can see what happened there. Bridger, also a big Avengers fan, and when his aunt shared his story on Instagram, Captain America himself, Chris Evans, took notice, promising a special reward.
Pal, you're a hero. What you did was so brave, so selfless. Your sister is so lucky to have you as a big brother. Your parents must be so proud of you. I'm going to track down your address, and I'm going to send you an authentic Captain America shield because, pal, you deserve it. Keep being the man you are. We need people like you. Hang in there. I know recovery might be tough, but based on what I've seen, I don't think there's much that can slow you down.
Oh, what a nice guy. And
I thought that was pretty cool. The fact that Chris Evans wanted to make sure this man actually got Captain America shield. Now, what they don't show, and I wasn't able to find any video outside of Instagram, unfortunately, was that Robert Downey Jr., also who played Iron Man, for all those that don't know, unless you've been living under a rock, also reached out to this very young man and sat there and said that he's going to send one of his Iron Man helmets to him. So, kudos to a kid that decided to, defend his sister from a dog attack. And I mean, anybody who's ever fought off a German Shepherd or ever been dog bitten before, that is not an easy feat, especially for a child fighting a German Shepherd and making sure his sister's all right. But again, I just thought that was pretty cool that celebrities are just doing what they can at the same time. That's some stuff that, humanity. Even so more humanity, there is one last story I do have that's actually on the very same page that Tyler Perry actually wanted to do some helpful stuff as well. Which I, like I said, hang on a second before you play. And I want to say this about Tyler Perry as well, because Tyler Perry actually did something very cool this weekend as well.
Perry donated 1,000 gift cards to help repair goodwill between the Atlanta Police Department and the community that they serve. Officers handed out $50 Kroger cards this week, in some cases going door to door. One lady even got a wake-up call. Look at this.
Just wanted to give you this, get that token of appreciation, and hope that it helps benefit you and your family during these really, really troubling times. So appreciate it. Did we wake you up? We get you up early.
Okay, you can wake me up for a free gift card. This was in the area that Wendy's, where Rayshard Brooks was killed by a former APD officer. Tyler Perry said in a statement that this was about trying to bridge unity in the city and that many officers do a great job and are his personal friends.
And you gotta love that. Like I said, the only thing that would actually make that better if Tyler Perry himself just went out as Medea. Could you imagine Medea giving you a $50 gift card but cussing you out at the same time? I just want to sit there and give you this gift card. I know you need it, and God bless you and all that. But hey, I still got it. Don't be fooled. I do carry in this purse. But again, I know, terrible Medea impression. I know. But again, I think that's cool that celebrities are doing everything that they can. You're not going to solve everything in the world. And of course, like I said before, if you have the ability, like I keep saying this, and I'm going to keep saying this at the end of every podcast. If you have the ability to change somebody's life or to make things better or just to give them a donut, give them something that, be able to make somebody happy a day, do that. The world could use more of this right now. Because of all the stuff that's going on right now, one random act of kindness is honestly it actually makes a grand difference in somebody's life. I definitely can attest to that. With all that being said, guys, that's really all of the all the stuff I got. So I do thank everybody for watching. As I'm sitting there wiping stuff that out of my eyes. I do thank you everybody for watching, and like I said, there is a scroll above my head, so apparently it's my Cash App. So in the event that you feel a need to do a random act of kindness, feel free to do so. If not, completely understand. Times are hard. I do ask if you're not able to give, then just tell people about the show. Tell people who like to listen to news that's not biased or, not try to point you in a direction, but to give you all the facts that allow you to make up your mind for yourself, which is what my goal is on this show to do. But definitely let somebody know from there and just go from there on that. Now, before I do get out of here, I am not the only cat that actually has podcasts. I will start with my buddy Vaughn, Big BZA Dot, who's in here, who is probably right now at his job. Like I said, Vaughn, I need a guitar, preferably black. Kind of long stranded. Electric will be fine, but I'm good with acoustic as well. But anyway, he's actually got a few shows on here. I'll start with his first one, the BSTs, the Intercast, which I like to call a newscast. That news could be music, video games, or trailers, things that lead up to the show. He also has Rhythmness, which is an album show, which he actually goes over albums. We're kind of due for Rhythmness, Vaughn, to be honest with you. And you've probably seen me on his show a few times where I've sat there and I've, we and him have discussed our taste in music, and I guarantee we're on opposite ends of the musical spectrum. We are, but differences in music actually do create the type of conversations that we love to have on the show. And of course, he has Random Fuck with Uncle VZ. It is the pool of ratchets we sometimes never toast to take a break from life, which is basically Vaughn taking a bunch of videos to a theme. And some of those videos make you cry. Some of those videos will just have you going, what the fuck? And some of them will just be like scratching your head. All in the good fun of entertainment. So, all of his shows can be found under his Facebook page at a Big BZA Dot, and of course all social medias. And also Thomas Reed, aka the Mountain Puncher, has To Be Determined, which he does his Q&As live from the gym as he works out, if he remembers to do so, because I love Thomas. I love Thomas, but that man has a one-track mind, because I guarantee you right now he is at the gym right now, and he's supposed to be doing his podcast. And I'm going to bring that up every chance I get. But he is a fitness guy. If you see Thomas Reed on Facebook, he loves fitness. Let's talk about it. Loves to work out and loves to share what he knows to help you reach your zenith. So his Q&As are done. I think he says he's going to start doing his Q&As every Thursday when at the gym. He's supposed to do one today because, like I said, I'm going to remind him when I see him. But again, also look up his YouTube page, number 2, letter T, letter B, letter D. That's 2TBD as his YouTube page where all his shows will be as well. Now, as far as yours truly, I do have a few shows of my own. Every Tuesday from 7 to 9 p.m. is the Burned Out Podcast, in which is my storytelling podcast that I do, telling real life stories from my background in IT. Of course, every Saturday from 10 a.m. to noon is these podcasts, How the Frack We Got Here. Of course, a little bit later tonight, between 7 to 9 p.m., will be the Off Limits Podcast. It is a podcast that definitely goes there, and by goes there, I mean there is not a subject we will not talk about. And I've got a pretty good one today that I think a lot of people will be able to relate to. Now, will you watch it? That's a good question, because I'm kind of curious to see what they'll say when we talk about this. Aside from that, on Sunday, between 7 and 9 p.m. is my Get Bit podcast. My Get Bit podcast is basically a blurred podcast, which is a black dude and a nerd put together as a blurred, and for non-blurreds, and blurreds who don't, and people who don't know they're blurreds, because like I said, if you have a fandom, you are a nerd. There's nothing wrong with that. But we want to bring everybody to the table as we discuss video games, comic books, Comic-Con, sci-fi, television shows, movies, and reviews. And trust me, I will have a review of Ghost of Tsushima. I have yet to play it. I'm going to play it today, and just to give an in-depth review of that by Sunday. Hopefully not beating it, but I do kind of get obsessed when I play video games. Like, if I play new video games, I feel a need to beat it as humanly possible. I don't know why. It's just the way I'm wired. But a review will be on that as Sunday as well. All of my shows can be found under my Facebook at William Buchanan, or on their own Facebook and YouTube pages. So if you on Facebook or on YouTube, you can look up How the Frack We Got Here, The Burned Out Podcast, The Off Limits Podcast, and of course Get Bit, that is GITBIT. You'll be able to see every podcast that I've done, and definitely feel free to critique or comment on those things for there. And speaking of critiques or comics, critiquing, if you like what I did, please let me know. If you didn't like what I did, please let me know. I am just trying to make this platform better for everybody to enjoy, because if you noticed, I have not successfully, we've limited the amount of language and profanity, because like I said, I wanted to be geared toward more than just adults watching this. I want kids to watch this as well. So we are going to monitor the language on How the Frack We Got Here and on Get Bit. But unfortunately for the Burned Out Podcast and for the Off Limits Podcast that's happening later this evening, look, it's going to be adults, so there's just no way around that. But we will try to make the other two shows, kid-friendly. And I mean, they're going to start being kid-friendly from here on out. So, beyond that, guys, like I said, thank you all again for watching. And like I said about How the Frack We Got Here, we are just simply trying to inform people. We're not trying to persuade people. We're not trying to change your minds. We are not trying to influence you in any way or fashion. What we are going to do is present the stories as they are, present the facts as they are, and even the stories that don't really get seen a lot on the national news syndicate. But at the same time, we want to present that to you and inform you and allow you to make up your own mind. Because an informed community can make a lot better decisions than an uninformed one, because an uninformed one got us trumped. And that's how the Frack We Got Here. So I thank you all guys for watching. Please be safe out there during this COVID-19. Please, please, please wear a mask. It's not that hard. We've tried the other way. It doesn't work. Wear a mask. Go out unless you absolutely have to. Trust me, I understand the whole idea of being cooped up. There's nothing wrong with going outside and being in your backyard, in your patio, or going to a park and enjoying life out there. We're not saying not to do that. We're just saying avoid house parties for a little while. That's all I'm saying. But if you're like me and today's cheat day and you gotta have something that's deep fried and cow, I understand it, because I feel that need. But I'm gonna come right back here as soon as I get what I need. Also, aside from that, guys, like I said, if I'm being safe, again, this whole idea of just being safe, we need to start practicing that now. And also, thank you, doctors, nurses, doctors' aides, nurses' aides, environmental people, those that work in hospitals. Thank you guys who are working in grocery stores, gas stations. Thank you, truckers. Thank you, United States Postal Service workers, people working at Amazon, DHL, UPS, FedEx, all these areas that still keep America running that you guys are not getting enough credit for. I just want to say thank you because it's not being said enough, and more I wish could be done for you, but I wish I was the president, I would do so. But aside from that, guys, have a wonderful weekend. Please be safe. I'm out. Peace.